Welcome to Warhammer 40k 8th edition Battle Report 19, 1850 points, Death Guard vs. Ultramarines. This is the chapter approved Maelstrom of War mission, Targets of Opportunity, and we will be rolling for a random map deployment today. The Death Guard will have 6 command points in this battle, and the Ultramarines will have 9 command points. Let's start by taking a quick look around the board and taking a look at where the objective markers have been placed. So starting over in this corner of the board, we have objective marker 1 right in the middle. Moving over to this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 4 in the middle of the board, surrounded by a bunch of ruins. And finally, on this side of the board, we have this 2 foot by 2 foot section with objective marker 6 in the middle. Over on the other side of the board, we have this 2 foot by 2 foot section with objective marker 2 right here in the middle. Moving over to this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 5 right here in the middle of the board. And finally, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 3 right here next to this crater in the middle of this section. And now we will roll for the random map. And here's the dice roll, getting a 4, which is hammer and anvil. So now we will roll for which army will deploy on which side. On a 1, 2, or 3, the Death Guard will deploy on the near side, and the Ultramarines will deploy on the far side. On a 4, 5, or 6, the Ultramarines will deploy on the near side, and the Death Guard will deploy on the far side. And here's the dice roll, getting a 3, which means the Death Guard will deploy on the near side, and the Ultramarines will deploy on the far side. On a 1, 2, or 3, the Death Guard will begin deploying first. On a 4, 5, or 6, the Ultramarines will begin deploying first. And here's that dice roll, getting a 3 again, so the Death Guard will begin deploying first. We'll be back after the deployment. The armies have now finished deploying. The Death Guard began deploying first, but the Ultramarines finished deploying first, and therefore the Ultramarines will go first unless the Death Guard are able to successfully seize the initiative. Let's take a look at where the armies have been placed, starting with the Death Guard. Starting on the right side of the Death Guard deployment from the Ultramarines perspective, we have the Chaos Land Raider, and it has the Plague Marines, the Plague Surgeon, the Tallyman, and the Malignant Plague Caster all embarked inside. We then have the first Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, the first squad of Nurgling Swarms sitting on objective marker 6, the Death Guard Warlord Mortarion, the Plague Burst Crawler, the Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, the second one, and finally the second squad of Nurgling Swarms sitting on objective marker 2. Now we will take a look at the Ultramarines deployment, starting on the left side of their deployment from Death Guard's perspective, and we have the first squad of Tactical Marines sitting on objective marker 1, the first Storm Raven with the first Assault Centurion squad, and the Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus embarked inside, the second squad of Tactical Marines with a couple of the bolt guns hiding behind this building, the Ultramarines Warlord Rabout Guilliman, the third squad of Tactical Marines sitting on objective marker 3, and finally the second Storm Raven with the second Assault Centurion squad and the second Chaplain embarked inside. So now the Death Guard will attempt to seize the initiative, and they are looking for 6. And they fail by getting a 3. So let's go into Ultramarines turn 1. Going into Ultramarines turn 1, a reminder that the Ultramarines have 9 command points available, and the Death Guard have 6 command points available. At the start of their turn, the Ultramarines drew 3 new tactical objective cards, and they drew Supremacy, score D3 victory points if you control any 3 objective markers at the end of your turn. Defend Objective 4, score 2 victory points if you control Objective Marker 4 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And Defend Objective 1, score 2 victory points if you control Objective Marker 1 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And Objective Marker 4 is right here in No Man's Land, currently not being held by anyone. And Objective Marker 1 is right here, currently being held by this squad of Tactical Marines. So going into the movement phase for Ultramarines turn 1, this squad of Tactical Marines will remain still. This squad of Tactical Marines sitting on Objective Marker 3 will also remain still. This Tactical Marine squad will have the last cannon remain still, but the 4 models with bolt guns, including the Sergeant, will move up the board up to 6 inches. And after thinking about it, I did decide to move the last cannon as well so that all 5 models could be inside of this crater to get a better armor save. This will mean, however, that the last cannon will have to subtract 1 from hit rolls when shooting the last cannon. Next, Rabout Guilliman is going to move up the board up to 8 inches. And Guilliman only moved up a few so that he could still be behind the Tactical Marines for the purpose of targeting, so that he cannot be shot right away. But this way, he stays within 6 inches of those Tactical Marines to give them reroll hit rolls and reroll wound rolls. Next, this Storm Raven is going to remain in flying mode, and it will fly up the board. Because it's at full health, it can fly up to 45 inches, but it has to fly at least 20 inches. And the Storm Raven will finish its movement right here. This way, it stays within 6 inches of Guilliman, but is now within 12 inches of Mortarion if it wishes to fire rapid fire with the Hurricane Bolters into Mortarion. Finally, in the Ultramarines movement phase, this Storm Raven will also remain in flying mode, and it will fly up the board at least 20 inches, but no more than 45. And the second Storm Raven will end up right here. He is also within 6 inches of Guilliman. However, unfortunately for the Ultramarines, he is over 12 inches away from Mortarion, so he will not have rapid fire with the Hurricane Bolters if he fires at Mortarion. And the reason why the 2 Storm Ravens are able to fit like this is because of the crater that the Tactical Marines are in, this one right here, which is pushing the base of the Storm Raven up at just enough of an angle so that the wings of the Storm Raven are not actually touching each other. So it is perfectly legal for the 2 Storm Ravens to be like this. So going into the shooting phase for Ultramarines turn 1, we will start with the first Storm Raven, the one that is in rapid fire range, meaning 12 inches of Mortarion. And we will fire everything that he has into Mortarion. Starting with the 2 Hurricane Bolters, 24 shots hitting on 3s, getting 16 hits and 8 rerolls. And here's the 8 rerolls. Getting just 1 miss, so 23 hits. Wounding on 5s. Getting 5 wounds and 18 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 6 more wounds for 11 wounds total. 11 3-up armor saves, and fails 1. 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which passes, so no wounds taken. Now the Twin Heavy Bolter, 6 shots hitting on 3s, getting 6 hits. Wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds and 4 rerolls. And here's the 4 rerolls, still failing to wound. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, and passes both. Next is 2 Storm Strike missile launchers, hitting on 3s, getting 1 hit and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 2nd hit. Wounding on 3s, and both fail to wound. Getting 2 rerolls, getting 1 wound, 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. But the Death Guard will use 1 command point, going from 6 down to 5 in order to reroll that failed invuln. And here's the reroll, and does save it. Now the Twin Heavy Plasma Cannon will fire supercharged shots, getting 2 D3 shots, and that is 5 shots. Hitting on 3s, getting 4 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 5th hit. Wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds and 3 rerolls. And here's the 3 rerolls, getting 4 wounds total. 4 4-up invulnerable saves, passes 2 and fails 2. And they are 2 damage apiece, so 4 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 2 and fails 2. So Mortarion will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 16. So now the second Storm Raven will fire everything that it has into Mortarion. Starting with 2 Hurricane Bolters, which are not in rapid fire range, so 12 shots hitting on 3s, getting 6 hits and 6 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting all 12 hits. Wounding on 5s, getting 4 wounds and 8 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting 4 additional wounds for 8 wounds total. 8 3-up armor saves, passes 6 and fails 2. 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 1 and fails 1. So Mortarion will fall from 16 wounds down to 15. Now for the Twin Heavy Bolter, 6 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits and 3 rerolls. And here's the 3 rerolls, getting all 6 hits. Wounding on 5s, getting 3 wounds and 3 rerolls. And here's the 3 rerolls, getting no more wounds, so 3 wounds total. 3 4-up invulnerable saves, passes 2 but fails 1. 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, and it fails, so 1 more damage. So Mortarion will fall from 15 wounds down to 14. Now for the 2 Storm Strike missile launchers, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits, wounding on 3s, and getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, passes 1 and fails 1. They are 3 damage apiece, so 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 2 and fails 1. So Mortarion will go from 14 wounds down to 13. The Twin Heavy Plasma Cannon will fire supercharged shots, so 2d3 shots, and gets 5 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 4 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 5th hit. Wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more wound. 4 4-up invulnerable saves, passes 1 and fails 3. And these are 2 damage apiece, so 6 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passes 4 of them, failing 2. So Mortarion will fall from 13 wounds down to 11. Next, Rabout Guilliman is within 24 inches of Mortarion, and so he will fire his Hand of Dominion at full range into Mortarion. 3 shots, hitting on 2s, and getting 3 hits, wounding on 5s, and all fail to wound. Here's the 3 rerolls, getting 2 wounds. Minus 1 AP, so 2 4-up invulnerable saves, passes 1 and fails 1. And they are 2 damage apiece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 1 and fails 1. So Mortarion will fall from 11 wounds down to 10. Next, this Tactical Marine squad, which did move up in the movement phase, is all within 24 inches of Mortarion, so the entire squad will fire into Mortarion. Starting with the last cannon, which did move, so hitting on a 4, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. It will do d6 damage, doing just 1 damage, but the Ultramarines will use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 9 down to 8 in order to reroll the amount of damage. So first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do, so they will stay at 9 command points. And here's the reroll for the damage, and it will do 5 damage. 5 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and fails all 5 of them. So Mortarion will fall from 10 wounds down to 5 left. Now the 4 bolt guns will shoot, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more hit. Wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more wound. 2 3-up armor saves, passes 1 and fails 1. 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which fails. So Mortarion will fall from 5 wounds down to 4 left. Finally, the last unit that is able to see Mortarion from the Ultramarine side is this Tactical Marine squad sitting on Objective Marker 3, and the only weapon in range is the 1 last cannon, so that last cannon will fire at Mortarion. And the Ultramarines will start by using the stratagem Scions of Guilliman for 1 command point, taking them from 9 down to 8. Use this stratagem when an Ultramarines infantry or Ultramarines biker unit is selected to attack in a shooting or fight phase. You can reroll all hit rolls of 1 for that unit for the rest of the phase. If the unit is a tactical squad or intercessor squad, reroll all failed hit rolls instead. So first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do not. So the Ultramarines are now permanently down to 8 command points. But the last cannon, which did not move, will hit on a 3, and it does hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. Finally, the last unit to be activated in the Ultramarine shooting phase will be this squad of Tactical Marines sitting on objective marker 1. Unfortunately for them, they cannot see Mortarion, and so the last cannon will instead shoot at the Chaos Land Raider, hitting on a 3. And it fails to hit. So that's the end of the Ultramarine shooting phase for turn 1. There are no charges to declare in the assault phase, which means there are no fights to resolve in the fight phase, and there are no morale tests to take in the morale phase. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Ultramarines failed to complete supremacy as they are only holding 2 objective markers, not 3. They failed to defend objective 4, and they failed to defend objective 1, although they are now 1 turn into defending objective 1. And so at the end of Ultramarines turn 1, the score currently sits at 0 victory points for the Ultramarines and 0 victory points for the Death Guard. Going into Death Guard turn 1, a reminder that the Death Guard have 5 command points, and the Ultramarines have 8 command points. And so the Death Guard started by drawing 3 tactical objective cards, and the first one they drew was Priority Orders Received. When this tactical objective is generated, immediately generate a bonus tactical objective. This does not count towards the number of active tactical objectives you currently have in play. Your Warlord is the only unit that can be used to achieve the bonus tactical objective. They must be the only unit used to control an objective marker, the unit that destroys the last model in an enemy unit, and so on. If you achieve this, you score both the number of victory points stated on the bonus tactical objective and an additional 3 victory points. If the tactical objective is discarded, so too is the bonus tactical objective. And the bonus tactical objective is Master the Warp. Score 1 victory point if you manifested or denied a psychic power during this turn. If you manifested or denied 3 or more psychic powers, score D3 victory points instead. The second objective card is Defend Objective 6. Score 2 victory points if you control objective marker 6 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And Secure Objective 6. Score 1 victory point if you control objective marker 6 at the end of your turn. And objective marker 6 is this one right here, currently being held by this squad of Nurgling Swarms. So going into the movement phase for Death Guard turn 1, this squad of Nurgling Swarms sitting on objective marker 6 will remain still. This squad of Nurgling Swarms sitting on objective marker 2 will also remain still. This Plague Burst Crawler is going to remain still. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And it will finish its movement right here. Next, the Chaos Land Raider is going to move up the board up to 10 inches, and it will finish its movement right here. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and it will finish its movement right here. Finally, Mortarion is going to move up the board up to 8 inches, now that he's down to 4 wounds. And Mortarion will finish his movement right here. Going into the Psychic phase, for Death Guard turn 1, we will start with Mortarion, who will attempt to manifest Blades of Putrefaction and Miasma of Pestilence onto himself. Starting with Miasma of Pestilence, which does have a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with a 10, so it will go off. Now for Blades of Putrefaction, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 7, so both will go off. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to attempt to manifest Smite onto this Storm Raven. Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 12, but also will suffer Perils of the Warp. So first, resolving Perils of the Warp, D3 mortal wounds on himself, and will just suffer 1 mortal wound, and he has a 5-up, disgustingly resilient roll, which he passes, so no wounds taken. Now, D6 mortal wounds onto the Storm Raven, and it will do 6 mortal wounds. And because of that, the Ultramarines are going to use the stratagem Armor of Contempt for 1 command point. Use this stratagem when Adeptus Astartes vehicle suffers a mortal wound, roll a d6 for that mortal wound and each other mortal wound inflicted on this model for the rest of the phase. On a 5-up, the mortal wound is ignored and has no effect. And so that 1 command point will take them from 8 down to 7, but on a 5-up, they get the command point back, and they do not. So the Ultramarines are now permanently down to 7 command points. But now they get to roll a dice for each of the 6 mortal wounds, and on 5-ups they are ignored. And they will ignore 2 of the mortal wounds, but they still take 4 of them. So this Storm Raven will fall from 14 starting wounds down to 10. Finally, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will attempt to manifest Smite onto the other Stormraven. And it has a warp charge value of 5. And it fails with a 3, but does not cause perils. But the Death Guard will use 1 command point for a command reroll going from 5 down to 4 in order to reroll the 1. They are looking for at least a 3, and they still fail by getting a 4. So that Smite will not go off. Going into the shooting phase, this Plague Burst Crawler is going to fire everything that it has into this Stormraven. Starting with the Heavy Slugger, 4 shots, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince being within 6 inches. And it gets 3 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Wounding on 5s, and getting 1 wound. Minus 1 AP, so 1 4-up armor save, which passes. 2 Entropy Cannons, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, and getting 2 hits. Wounding on 3s, and getting 2 wounds. Minus 4 AP, so the Stormraven will not have a save. They will do D6 damage apiece, and it will do 10 damage. So this Stormraven will fall from 14 starting wounds down to 4. Now for the Plague Burst Mortar, D6 shots, and it will get just 1 shot. And the Death Guard will use 1 command point for a command reroll now that it's a different phase, going from 4 down to 3 in order to reroll the number of shots. And here's the reroll, getting 3 shots. Hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 3 misses, but 1 of them can be rerolled. And here's the reroll, and it does hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. Minus 2 AP, so 1 5-up armor save, which fails. It will do D3 damage, and it'll do 3 damage. So this Stormraven will fall from 4 wounds down to 1 left. Next, Mortarion is going to fire the Lantern into the Stormraven. Hitting on a 2, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. Minus 3 AP, so 1 6-up armor save, and it fails. And because it is a guaranteed 3 damage, in an attempt to save the Stormraven, the Ultramarines are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, now that it's a new phase, going from 7 down to 6, in order to reroll that failed save. But first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do not. So the Ultramarines are now permanently down to 6 command points. But now re-rolling the failed save, needing a 6, and they still failed, which means that Stormraven will be killed off for first blood. And on a 6, does it crash and burn? And it does not. So first, the final wound will be removed. Then the 4 models inside will emergency disembark. And now that they have emergency disembarked, the Stormraven will be removed from the map. And now the Ultramarines have to roll a dice for each model that emergency disembarked, and on a roll of a 1, a model is removed. And all 4 models survive. Lastly, in the shooting phase for Death Guard turn 1, this Chaos Land Raider is going to fire everything that it has into this Stormraven. Starting with the Combi Bolter, which, thanks to the wing from the Stormraven, is in rapid fire range. So 4 shots hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince nearby, but getting 4 hits. Wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up armor save, which passes. Twin Heavy Bolter, 6 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 4 hits, and no rerolls. Wounding on 5s, and getting 3 wounds. Minus 1 AP, so 3 4-up armor saves. Passes 2 and fails 1. So this Stormraven will fall from 10 wounds down to 9. Finally, the 2 Twin Last Cannons, hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, getting 3 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 4th hit. Wounding on 3s, and getting 4 wounds. 4 6-up armor saves, passes 1 and fails 3. 3 D6 damage, and it does 8 damage. So the Stormraven survives with 1 wound. And so the Stormraven will fall from 9 wounds down to 1 left. Going into the Assault phase for Death Guard turn 1, there are 2 charges to declare. First is this Demon Prince declaring a multi-charge onto these newly disembarked Centurions and Chaplain. The Demon Prince will need 8 inches to make it into combat with the Centurions, because the closest model is this one right here, and will need 10 inches to make it into combat with the Chaplain. Then, depending on whether or not the Demon Prince makes it into combat with at least the Centurions. If the Demon Prince does make it into combat, then Mortarion will declare a multi-charge onto the Stormraven and the Centurions. If the Demon Prince is not able to make it into combat, Mortarion will only charge the Stormraven. And because the Demon Prince needs 8 inches to make it within an inch of those Centurions, and needs 10 inches to be within an inch of the Chaplain, that means all of the Flamers from those various models are actually out of range and cannot fire Overwatch. Which means the only weapon that can fire Overwatch is the bolt gun portion of the Combi Flamer on the Chaplain. So 2 shots, hitting on 6s, and failing to hit. So now the charge range from the Demon Prince, needing at least 8 inches, and he gets 8 inches to make it into combat with just the Centurions. So now the Demon Prince is within an inch of the Centurions, but not within base to base, since he was over 8 inches away, but less than 9, and so they will be locked in combat. And because of that particular charge, and with where the Demon Prince positioned himself, the Chaplain is over 3 inches away from where the Demon Prince ended up, which means the Chaplain cannot heroically intervene. So this means we will now do Mortarion's multi-charge, but the only unit that will be able to overwatch will be the Stormraven. So the Stormraven will start with its 2 Hurricane Bolters in rapid fire range, 24 shots, hitting on 6s. Getting 3 hits and 21 rerolls, and just so that they don't get knocked over, I will remove the 3 6s from this dice tray until all of the hits have been resolved. So 3 hits, 21 rerolls. And here's the 21 rerolls. Getting 4 additional hits, which means they will have 7 hits total. Wounding on 5s. Getting 3 wounds and 4 rerolls. And here's the 4 rerolls, getting 2 more wounds for 5 wounds total. 5 3-up armor saves, and fails 3 of them. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passes 2, failing 1. So Mortarion will drop from 4 wounds down to 3 left. 6 shots from the Twin Heavy Bolter, hitting on 6s. Getting 1 hit and 5 rerolls. And here's the 5 rerolls, getting 5 hits total. Wow. Wounding on 5s. And getting 3 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more wound. 4 4-up invulnerable saves, passes 2 and fails 2. 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and fails both of them. So Mortarion will drop from 3 wounds down to 1. So now the 2 Storm Strike missile launchers, hitting on 6s. Both fail to hit. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. The Death Guard are going to use 1 command point, going from 3 down to 2, now that it's a new phase, to use a command reroll to reroll the failed invulnerable save. And here's the reroll. And it passes, so no further damage from the Storm Strike missile launcher. But now the Stormraven is going to fire its Twin Heavy Plasma Cannon, and it will fire supercharged shots. So 2 D3 shots, hitting 6 shots, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit and 5 rerolls. And here's the 5 rerolls, getting no further hits and a 1. But we have to resolve the shots first before resolving the mortal wound. So the 1 shot that did go through, wounding on a 3, and it fails to wound, but it gets a reroll, and it still fails to wound. So now the Ultramarines are going to use the stratagem Armor of Contempt for 1 command point, bringing them from 6 down to 5, in order to attempt to ignore the mortal wound. So first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back for using the stratagem? and they do not. So the Ultramarines are permanently down to 5 command points. So now they will have a chance to ignore the mortal wound on a 5-up. And they do! So the Storm Raven will not kill itself. And so here is the charge range for Mortarion. And he rolls a double 1 and fails! Mortarion will not make the charge, and they have already used a command point, so they cannot re-roll. So Mortarion fails the charge. Oh my goodness. What is up with these dice today? Oh no. Just to double check, I went back and remeasured just to make sure, and Mortarion is 3¼ inches away from the Storm Raven, which means he needed a 3-inch charge to make it within an inch, and therefore Mortarion fails to make it into combat. And that Storm Raven is guaranteed to survive into Ultramarines turn 2. Oh, what a turn of events that is. Oh my goodness. That is absolutely insane. So we will now go into the fight phase with the one charge that did successfully happen, and that is the Demon Prince against the Centurions. And first, the Demon Prince will pile in. And now the Demon Prince is in base-to-base with the Centurion Sergeant. But first, Mortarion has one last chance to finish off that Storm Raven with 1 wound, and that is with his Host of Plagues. And both the Storm Raven and the Centurion squad will have to roll on the Host of Plagues table, since they are both within 7 inches. First, the Storm Raven, on a 6 since he's down to 1 wound, and it will not go off. So that Storm Raven will survive. Now for the Centurions, and they also will not have Host of Plagues go off. So the Demon Prince attacking the Centurion Assault Squad with its 2 sets of Malefic Talons, 7 attacks hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, 6s generate additional attacks, and that's 3 1s. So good thing for re-rolls. And here's the 3 re-rolls, getting 7 hits total, wounding on 3s. And getting 5 wounds. -2 AP, so 5 4-up armor saves. And they pass 2, but fail 3. And they do 2 damage apiece. However, unfortunately for the Death Guard, even though they did 6 damage, it is 3 sets of 2, and the Centurions are only 3 wounds apiece, which means 1 Centurion will take 2 of the attacks, which will remove him, and that means a 2nd Centurion only takes 2 damage, leaving him alive with 1 wound left. So even though 6 damage was dealt, only 1 Centurion is actually killed off because of the way that damage allocation works. And that does mean that the Centurion Sergeant and the other regular Centurion will pile in and fight back. And so the Centurions. The Centurion Sergeant has 3 attacks base, and the regular Centurion has 2 attacks base for 5 attacks total, with their siege drills attacking the Demon Prince, hitting on 3s, re-rolling thanks to the Chaplain, and getting 4 hits and 1 re-roll. And here's the re-roll, still failing to hit. Wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds and 1 cocked dice. And so here's the cocked dice, which will fail to wound. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passes 1 and fails 2. And they do 3 damage apiece, so 6 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 2 and fails 4. So the Demon Prince will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 4 left. And now, because all units that were engaged have fought, the Ultramarines are going to use the stratagem Honor the Chapter for 3 command points, bring them from 5 down to 2. Use this stratagem at the end of the fight phase, select an Adeptus Astartes Infantry or Adeptus Astartes Biker unit. That unit can immediately fight for a 2nd time. So first, rolling 3 dice for the command points used, and on 5-ups they get the command points back. And they will get 1 command point back, which means they will only drop down to 3. But the Centurion Assault Squad is going to attack again. So once again, 5 attacks with the siege drills, hitting on 3s, re-rolling thanks to the Chaplain, getting 1 hit, 3 misses, and 1 cocked dice. So here's the cocked dice first, and that will get a hit. Then the 3 rerolls will result in just 1 more hit. Wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up invulnerable saves, and fails both. And I'm going to make a disclaimer here about a strategic choice. The Death Guard do have 2 command points left, and they have not used command reroll in this phase, which means they could reroll one of those failed invulns. However, they are currently sitting on objective marker 6, and one of the tactical objective cards that they drew this turn is defend objective 6. And so the Death Guard want to hold on to their final 2 command points in order to be able to use the targets of opportunity special rule, or special stratagem I should say, where they can hold on to a tactical objective card from the previous turn, but it costs 2 command points. And so the Death Guard are going to hold on to their final 2 command points until the start of Death Guard turn 2, so that they can hold on to defend objective 6 and give themselves a guaranteed 2 extra victory points. So I do realize that it might seem silly to not use a command point here, but there is a strategic reasoning behind this. The reasoning being, I figure the chance that maybe he will pass enough disgustingly resilient rolls to not be killed off right here, it's worth taking that risk in order to be given 2 victory points guaranteed later down the road. Because with the way this game is going, it's looking very close right now with how things are currently turning out. So they will not use a command point to reroll an invuln, which means the 2 siege drill wounds will go through, which means it will do 6 damage. So we have 6 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and he passes 5 of them anyways, only failing 1. Oh my goodness. So after all of that talk, the Demon Prince falls from 4 wounds only down to 3 and will stay alive. And so that is the end of the fight phase. Going into the morale phase, there are no morale tests to take, as the Centurions only lost 1 model, and they are Ultramarines, and so it's impossible for them to fail their morale test after losing only 1 model. And so, taking a look at the tactical objective cards, Mortarion did successfully cast at least 1 psychic power, however he did not cast 3 or more, and so because of that, they will get 4 victory points for priority orders received Master the Warp. They are now 1 turn into defending objective 6, and they did successfully secure objective 6, which is worth 1 victory point. And so at the end of Death Guard turn 1, the score currently sits at 6 victory points for the Death Guard and 0 victory points for the Ultramarines. Going into Ultramarines turn 2, a reminder that the Ultramarines have 3 command points available, and the Death Guard have 2 command points available. However, the Death Guard are going to save their 2 command points until the start of Death Guard turn 2, so effectively, for Ultramarines turn 2, the Death Guard will have no command points. Also a reminder that the Ultramarines held on to the tactical objective cards Supremacy, Defend Objective 4, and Defend Objective 1 from their previous turn. And since this is the Maelstrom of War mission, Targets of Opportunity, those objective cards must be thrown away at the start of each new turn. However, since the Ultramarines are already 1 turn into Defending Objective 1, just like what the Death Guard are going to do, they will use the special mission stratagem, Second Chance, for 2 command points, taking them from 3 down to 1. Use this stratagem at the start of your turn before discarding your tactical objectives. Select 1 active tactical objective. That one will not be discarded due to the opportunity lost rule. You still generate 3 new ones after the others have been discarded for a total of 4. So obviously the Ultramarines are going to throw away Supremacy and Defend Objective 4, but they will still hold on to Defend Objective 1. But first, the Ultramarines will have a chance to hold on to the command points used for that stratagem. Rolling 2 dice and 5 ups will give them the command points back, so they will retain both command points, which means they will stay at 3 command points. And so the Ultramarines also drew 3 new tactical objective cards per the rule, and they drew Secure Objective 4, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 4 at the end of your turn. Honor Your Chapter, score 1 victory point if an enemy character lost a wound as the result of an attack made by one of your characters during this turn. If any enemy characters were slain as a result of such an attack, score D3 victory points instead. And Defend Objective 5, score 2 victory points if you control Objective Marker 5 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And so as a reminder, Objective Marker 1 is this one right here, currently being held by this squad of Tactical Marines, and they are 1 turn into defending it. Objective Marker 4 is here in No Man's Land, near the Chaos Land Raider, but currently not being held by anyone. And Objective Marker 5 is right here, going into the movement phase for Ultramarines turn 2. This squad of Tactical Marines sitting on Objective Marker 1 is going to remain still. This squad of Tactical Marines sitting on Objective Marker 3 will also remain still. This squad of Tactical Marines sitting in the crater will also remain still. This squad of Centurions will remain locked in combat with the Demon Prince. This chaplain is going to move up to 6 inches in order to be closer to Objective Marker 5. And after measuring, discovered that this Centurion, the one that is down to 1 wound, is currently within 3 inches of the center of Objective Marker 5, and so therefore the chaplain maneuvered itself so that it is now just over an inch away from the Demon Prince of Nurgle. This Storm Raven, the one that's down to 1 wound, is going to drop into hover mode, and the chaplain with the Armor Indomitus and the Assault Centurion squad inside of it will disembark. And they will disembark like such. All 3 of their bases are within 3 inches of the base of the Storm Raven so that they can legally disembark, with the chaplain with the Armor Indomitus behind them here. Now the Centurions will march up the board up to 4 inches closer to the Chaos Land Raider and the Demon Prince next to it. And they will finish their movement right here. And now the chaplain will march up the board up to 6 inches. And the chaplain will finish its movement right here. Now the Storm Raven that is in hover mode is going to move up to 20 inches closer to the Demon Prince and the Chaos Land Raider. And so the Storm Raven will slightly reposition itself and reshuffle itself so that it is here, and it is within 12 inches of the Chaos Land Raider. Finally, Rabout Gilmon is going to move himself up the board up to 8 inches. So Gilmon will end his movement here. He is about 5¼ inches away from Mortarion. Going into the shooting phase for Ultramarines turn 2, the Ultramarines will begin by having the last cannon from this Tactical Marine squad fire into the Chaos Land Raider like it did in Ultramarines turn 1. All of the bolt guns are still over 24 inches away, however. 1 shot, hitting on a 3, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. -3 AP, so 1 5-up armor save, which fails. It will do D6 damage, and it will do 3 damage. So this Chaos Land Raider will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 13. Next, this chaplain is going to fire the bolt gun portion of its combi flamer into Mortarion because he is within 12 inches. Unfortunately for the chaplain, there are no targets that are not engaged in close combat within 8 inches for the flamer portion, so only the bolt gun will fire. So 2 shots, hitting on a 3. Getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 5, and it fails to wound. Next, Rabout Gilmon is going to shoot his Hand of Dominion into Mortarion. And he is in rapid fire range, so 6 shots, hitting on 2s. And actually hitting on 3s thanks to Miasma of Pestilence, but re-rolling 1s thanks to himself. So 2 hits, 1 definite miss, and 3 re-rolls. And I think that chaplain also should have been hitting on 4s instead of 3s, but it did hit with a 4-up, if I remember correctly. Not that it matters because it didn't do any wounds, but I do apologize for saying that the chaplain hit on a 3. The chaplain really should have only hit on a 4. 3 rerolls, and getting 2 more hits. Wounding on 5s, and all failed to wound, getting 4 rerolls. And here's the 4 rerolls, still failing to wound. Next, the Storm Raven will fire everything that it has into the Chaos Land Raider. And unfortunately for the Storm Raven, now that it's down to 1 wound, it has a 5-up ballistic skill. So starting with the 2 Hurricane Bolters, 24 shots hitting on 5s. getting 7 hits and 17 rerolls. And here's the 17 rerolls, getting 5 additional hits for 12 hits total, wounding on 6s, and all fail to wound. So getting 12 rerolls, and getting 7 wounds. 7 2-up armor saves, and fails 1 of them. So the Chaos Land Raider will fall from 13 wounds down to 12. Now for the Twin Heavy Bolter, 6 shots hitting on 5s, getting 2 hits and 4 rerolls. And here's the 4 rerolls, failing to get any more hits. Wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to wound. Minus 1 AP, so 1 3-up armor save, which passes. 2 Storm Strike missile launchers hitting on 5s and getting 2 hits. Wounding on 4s, getting 1 wound and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 2nd wound. Minus 3 AP, so 2 5-up armor saves and fails both of them. 3 damage apiece. So the Chaos Land Raider will fall from 12 wounds down to 6 left. And the Storm Raven does not want to risk killing itself, so it will fire standard shots with the Twin Heavy Plasma Cannon. 2 D3 shots, getting 3 shots. Hitting on 5s, all fail to hit. Getting 3 rerolls, getting 2 hits and 1-1, so it's good that it fired standard shots. Wounding on 5s, both fail to wound, but 2 rerolls. And both failed to wound again, and those would not have wounded if they had been supercharged anyways, so it's just as well. Next, this squad of Tactical Marines are all within 24 inches of the Chaos Land Raider, and so the 4 bolt guns will fire into the Chaos Land Raider, and so will the last cannon. Starting with the last cannon, hitting on a 3, and it fails to hit, but re-rolling thanks to Guilliman, and it still fails to hit. 4 bolt guns hitting on 3s. Getting 3 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Wounding on 6s, all fail to wound. Getting 3 rerolls, and still failing to wound. And so now this Tactical Marine squad is going to fire the last cannon, which is the only thing within range, into Mortarion, who they can see. 1 shot hitting on a 3, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. And it will do D6 damage, and it will do 3 damage. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and he fails 2 of them, and that will kill Mortarion. And so that will give Slay the Warlord to the Ultramarines. But first, does Putrid Demise happen on a 4-up? And it does. So each unit within 7 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds unless it has the Nurgle keyword, and so that will include Guilliman, the Storm Raven, and both squads of Centurions. And so we will start with the Storm Raven, which only has 1 wound left, which means it is automatically killed off, and the Ultramarines are going to not use their command point to use the Armor of Contempt, because they might need the command point later, and so because of that, the Storm Raven is definitely killed off. On a 6, will it crash and burn? And it will not. So the Storm Raven is simply removed. So this Storm Raven will lose its last wound and be killed off. Next, D3 mortal wounds onto Rabout Guilliman. And he will take 3 mortal wounds. So Guilliman will drop from 9 starting wounds down to 6 left. Next, the injured Centurion squad that is engaged with the Demon Prince. They will take D3 mortal wounds, and they will take 2. So that will kill off the Centurion that's down to 1 wound, and that will drop the Centurion Sergeant from 3 wounds down to 2. Finally, the fully healthy Centurion squad, which unfortunately for them are within 7 inches of Mortarion, will take D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. And so unfortunately for them, 1 Centurion is straight up killed off. And so now, after all of that has been resolved, now Mortarion will be removed. Next, this squad of Centurions will fire, and now I deeply regret not having them shoot first, and they will shoot all of their flamers into the Chaos Land Raider. So rolling 4d6 instead of 6d6, but they will get 18 shots. This weapon automatically hits, so 18 hits. Wounding on 6s. and only getting 2 wounds. 2-up armor saves. Passes 1 and fails 1. And so the Chaos Land Raider will drop from 6 wounds down to 5. Finally, in the shooting phase, the Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus will fire its Combi Flamer with both profiles into the Chaos Land Raider. Starting with the Bolt Gun, hitting on 4s, getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 6, and it fails to wound. D6 attacks from the Flamer will get 5 attacks. It automatically hits, so 5 hits. Wounding on 6s, getting 1 wound. 2-up armor save, which passes. So going into the assault phase for Ultramarines turn 2. There are, depending on what happens, either 3 or 4 charges that will happen. First will be Guilliman declaring a charge into this Demon Prince, and he will need a 4-inch charge in order to make it within an inch of the Demon Prince. If Guilliman fails to make it in, and only if he fails to make it in, will then this Chaplain charge into the Demon Prince. If Guilliman makes it in, the Chaplain will not charge. But if Guilliman fails to make it in, then the Chaplain will charge in. Next, this Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus will declare a charge onto the Chaos Land Raider. And finally, these 2 Centurions will declare a multi-charge onto the Chaos Land Raider and the Demon Prince. So we will start with Guilliman charging into the Demon Prince, which is already locked in combat, so there is no Overwatch. Here is the charge range, and he gets 5 inches, so he will make it into combat. And because Guilliman rolled a 5 and not a 4, he was able to make it in base to base. Because Guilliman made it into combat, and I'm confident enough in his close combat abilities, this Chaplain will now not charge in. But now the Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus, who is charging the Chaos Land Raider, will charge next, which means we do have to resolve Overwatch. Starting with the Combi Bolter in rapid fire range, 4 shots hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit, wounding on a 4, and it wounds. Thanks to the Armor Indomitus, 1 2-up armor save, which passes. 6 shots from the Twin Heavy Bolter hitting on 6s, and all fail to hit. Finally, the 4 shots from the 2 Twin Last Cannons hitting on 6s, getting 2 hits and 1 reroll, the 1 thanks to the Demon Prince. So here's the reroll, and it gets a 3rd hit. Wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds. The Chaplain is going to pop the force field on his Armor Indomitus, so 2 3-up invulnerable saves, and both passed, so no damage taken. And apologies, I don't know why I thought a Last Cannon wounded on a 3 against the Chaplain, but the 2 also wounded, so a 3rd 3-up invulnerable save, which also passes. So the Chaplain passed all 3 invulnerable saves and will not take any damage in Overwatch. Finally, here's the Chaplain's charge distance, getting 5 inches. And unfortunately for the Chaplain, he is 6 1/4 inches away, which means that is a failed charge. And the Ultramarines will not use a command point to reroll the 2, so they will stay with a failed charge. Which means the Centurions will charge in next, but that means the Land Raider gets to fire Overwatch again, starting with the Combi Bolter, 4 shots, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Wounding on a 5, and it wounds. 1 2-up armor save, which passes. 6 shots from the Twin Heavy Bolter, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 4, and it fails to wound. 4 shots from the 2 Twin Last Cannons, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. -3 AP, so 1 5-up armor save, which fails. It will do D6 damage, and it will only do 1 damage. So the regular Centurion will drop from 3 wounds down to 2. But now the Centurions will charge in, and they get 8 inches. And so the 2 Centurions will finish their movement like so, with the normal Centurion just being within an inch of the Chaos Land Raider, pretty much base to base, and the Centurion Sergeant is within an inch of both the Demon Prince and the Chaos Land Raider, but being pretty much base to base with the Chaos Land Raider. And both models are within 6 inches of the Chaplain for the purpose of being able to reroll hit rolls in the fight phase in case something happens to the normal Centurion. And so we will start with this group right here. First, still in the assault phase, we have to resolve the Centurion assault launchers. And now the rule states if a model with a Centurion assault launcher finishes a charge move within an inch of an enemy unit, roll a d6. On a 4-up, that unit suffers a mortal wound. Now, because the Sergeant ended up within an inch of both the Land Raider and the Demon Prince, does that mean that he gets to roll a d6 for both units, or just for one? With what the rule states, I am going to take it as he gets to roll a dice for both units, since he ended up within an inch of both after finishing his charge. Therefore, we have 2 Centurion Assault Launcher dice rolls for the Land Raider and 1 for the Demon Prince, since the normal Centurion is only within an inch of the Land Raider. Please correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, but I see no reason within the rule as to why it would not affect both units, since it does state that it activates when you finish a charge move within an inch of an enemy unit. So first, the 2 dice rolls on the Land Raider, looking for 4-ups, and they get 1. So the Land Raider will take 1 mortal wound, going from 5 down to 4. Now the 1 Centurion Assault Launcher onto the Demon Prince, looking for a 4-up, and fails to get it anyways. So now we will go into the actual fight phase and start with the Centurions. They have 5 attacks total, 2 from the normal Centurion and 3 from the Sergeant. However, the Sergeant is going to split his attacks, and he will place 2 onto the Land Raider and 1 onto the Demon Prince. So there will be 4 attacks with the Siege Drills total onto the Land Raider and 1 attack total onto the Demon Prince. Starting with the 1 attack onto the Demon Prince, hitting on a 3, and it fails to hit, but re-rolling thanks to the Chaplain, and it still fails to hit, of course. 4 attacks onto the Land Raider, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 4th hit. Strength 10 versus Toughness 8 means 3s to wound, and only getting 2 wounds. 2 6-up armor saves, and fails both, and they are 3 damage apiece, so that is 6 damage. And so that will remove the final 4 wounds from the Land Raider. But does the Land Raider blow up on a 6? And it does not. So now all of the models inside will emergency disembark. So now after the emergency disembarkation, here's where all of the units ended up. We have the Tallyman, the Plague Surgeon, the Malignant Plague Caster, and then the 7 Plague Marines, with the Sergeant, the 2 Flails of Corruption, and finally the 4 Bubotic Axes. And now the Land Raider will be removed. And so now that the emergency disembarkation is complete and the Land Raider has been removed, we need to roll a dice for each model that emergency disembarked, and any rolls of 1 will straight up remove models. So here's the 10 dice rolls, and they don't get any 1s, so every single model survives. So now the only other charging unit, which is Rabout Guilliman, will attack onto the Demon Prince. And so Guilliman has 6 attacks base, and he will use all 6 attacks with the Emperor's Sword profile. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 6th hit. Strength 8 versus Toughness 6 means 3s to wound, and 6s cause additional mortal wounds, getting 5 wounds so far and 1 reroll. And so here's the 1 reroll, which does wound, and the 6 will cause D3 additional mortal wounds. And it will cause 3 mortal wounds, of course. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 1 and fails 2. So this Demon Prince will fall from 3 wounds down to 1 left. Now 6 5-up invulnerable saves, passes 2 and fails 4. And they do 3 damage apiece, so that is 12 damage. Can the Demon Prince make 12 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls? And no, it cannot. So that Demon Prince is killed off after failing 7 of the 12 disgustingly resilient rolls. And so with 6 points of overkill, this Demon Prince is killed off and removed. And so the Centurion Sergeant is not going to consolidate, but Guilliman will consolidate up to 3 inches towards the closest visible enemy unit, which is the Plague Burst Crawler. And so Guilliman will end up right here. So now the last unit that needs to fight in the fight phase is this Demon Prince, which will first pile in. So now it is in base to base, and it will now strike against the Centurions. So the Demon Prince attacking the Centurions. 7 attacks with its 2 sets of Malefic Talents, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, 6s generate additional attacks, and getting 6 hits and 1 reroll. So here's the 1 reroll, which still fails to hit, but there was a 6 in there, so we have an additional attack, which does hit on a 2. So 7 hits out of 7 attacks. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means 3s to wound. And no rerolls, so 6 wounds. Minus 2 AP, so 6 4-up armor saves. And they passed 4 of them. But they are 2 damage apiece, and so the first strike will finish off the 2 wounds on the 1 normal Centurion, and the second strike will take the Centurion Sergeant from 3 wounds down to 1 left. But they will still be locked in combat. So now that the fight phase is over, the Ultramarines are going to use the stratagem Honor the Chapter for their final 3 command points, taking them from 3 down to 0. Use this stratagem at the end of the fight phase, select an Adeptus Astartes infantry or Adeptus Astartes biker unit. That unit can immediately fight for a second time. And obviously, it will be the Centurion Sergeant who will get to attack again. But first, we get to roll 3 dice to see if any command points are given back. Looking for 5-ups, and getting 2 of the command points back. So the Ultramarines will still have 2 command points left. Now the Sergeant will strike against the Demon Prince, 3 attacks base with the Siege Drills, hitting on 3s, and re-rolling the 2 thanks to still being within 6 inches of the Chaplain. And here's the re-roll, getting a 3rd hit. Wounding on 3s, only getting 1 wound. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 1 and fails 2. And so the Demon Prince will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 6. So now, going into the morale phase, this Centurion squad lost 2 models. However, thanks to being an Ultramarine, the Centurion Sergeant has the leadership of 9, and therefore it is impossible for them to fail a morale check. This Centurion squad lost 1 model this turn. However, once again, Centurion Sergeant has a leadership of 9 thanks to being an Ultramarine, and therefore it is impossible for them to fail their morale check. And so at the end of Ultramarines turn 2, the Ultramarines have finally finished defending Objective 1 for 2 victory points. Thanks to the Chaplain in the Armor Indomitus, they have successfully secured Objective 4 for 1 victory point. Thanks to Guilliman slaying the Demon Prince, they successfully completed Honor Your Chapter, and because the Demon Prince was slain, they will get D3 victory points. And so here's that dice roll, and it will give them 2 victory points. And thanks to the other Chaplain, the one that does not have the Armor Indomitus, and the one who did not charge into the Demon Prince that was killed by Guilliman, they are now 1 turn into defending Objective 5. And so at the end of Ultramarines turn 2, the score currently sits at 6 victory points for the Ultramarines and 6 victory points for the Death Guard. Going into Death Guard turn 2, a reminder that the Death Guard have 2 command points left, and the Ultramarines also have 2 command points left. Also a reminder that the Death Guard held on to defend Objective 6 from the previous turn, and they will be using the mission stratagem, Second Chance, for their final 2 command points in order to hold on to it for another turn. But because the Tallyman is now on the battlefield thanks to the Land Raider being blown up, they get to roll 2 dice, and if the total equals a 7, they will get the 2 command points back. And they do not, rolling an 8. So the Death Guard are now officially out of command points. But the Death Guard also get to draw 3 new tactical objective cards, bringing them up to a total of 4 for this turn. And they draw Secure Objective 5, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 5 at the end of your turn. Scour the Skies, score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy unit that can fly was destroyed during this turn. And Grandfather's Gift, score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy unit was completely destroyed during your turn, and the last model in the unit was slain by an attack made by a Death Guard model attacking with a plague weapon, i.e. a Plague Sword, the Plague Skull of Glalitha, or any weapon with the Plague Weapon ability. And just as a reminder, Objective Marker 6 is right here, currently being held by this squad of Nurglings, and they were already 1 turn into holding it. And Objective Marker 5 is all the way over here, currently being held by a Chaplain of the Ultramarines. Going into the movement phase for Death Guard turn 2, this squad of Nurgling Swarms will remain still. This squad of Nurgling Swarms holding on to Objective Marker 2 will also remain still. This Plague Burst Crawler will also remain still. This Demon Prince will remain locked in combat with the Centurion Sergeant. Finally, all of these various units, meaning the Plague Marines, Plague Surgeon, Tallyman, and Malignant Plaguecaster, are all going to move up to 5 inches up the board towards the Ultramarines Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus, and we will move them separately, starting with the Plague Marines, and then moving on to the Malignant Plaguecaster, then the Plague Surgeon, then the Tallyman, but I'm just mentioning it now because there are a lot of models to untangle from each other, and so we'll come back once all 4 units have been moved. And so here's where they all ended up, pretty much staying within the formation that they were before, just 5 inches further up the board from their previous spot. So now going into the Psychic phase for Death Guard turn 2, we will start with this Demon Prince of Nurgle attempting to manifest Smite onto the Centurion Sergeant. And Smite has a Warp Charge value of 5, and it fails with a 3. Of course, it had no command points to reroll. So then, finally, the Malignant Plaguecaster is going to attempt to manifest Smite onto the Chaplain because it is slightly closer than the Centurion Sergeant is, and then he will attempt to manifest Putrescent Vitality onto the Plague Marines. So, starting with Smite, which has a Warp Charge value of 5, and gets it with a 6. So it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. So this Chaplain will fall from 4 wounds down to 1 left. Now for Putrescent Vitality onto the Plague Marines, which has a Warp Charge value of 6, and he gets it with an 8. So they will be +1 strength and +1 toughness until the start of the next Death Guard Psychic phase. Going into the shooting phase for Death Guard turn 2, all 4 of these various units will shoot into the Chaplain because he is the only unit, other than the Centurion, who's already locked in combat, within 12 inches for their various weapons. So the Tallyman will fire a Plasma Pistol, the Plague Surgeon, the Malignant Plaguecaster, and a regular Plague Marine will all throw crack grenades, and the Plague Champion will fire a Bolt Pistol. And all 4 units are within 6 inches of the Demon Prince in order to be able to reroll hit rolls of 1. So, starting with the Tallyman, who will fire his Plasma Pistol, and he will fire a supercharged shot. And it hits on a 3, wounding on a 2. And it wounds. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. The Bolt Pistol from the Plague Champion, hitting on a 3, and re-rolling the 1. Here's the re-roll, and still failing to hit. The Crack Grenade from the regular Plague Marine, hitting on a 3, and fails to hit. Getting a re-roll, and still fails to hit. Now the Malignant Plaguecaster, throwing a Crack Grenade, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. -1 AP, so 1 3-up armor save, which fails. And it does D3 damage, but that doesn't matter because the Chaplain is down to 1 wound. And so the Chaplain will lose his final wound and be killed off. Finally, this Plague Burst Crawler is the only other thing that can shoot this shooting phase, and so it will fire all of its weapons, and it will fire its Plague Burst Mortar into the Centurion Sergeant, and it will fire its 2 entropy cannons and its Heavy Slugger into Guilliman, because Guilliman is within 12 inches and therefore cannot be targeted with the mortar. So starting with D6 shots from the mortar, getting 1 shot of course, hitting on a 4, and fails to hit. Now firing into Guilliman, 2 entropy cannons, hitting on 4s, getting 1 hit, wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes. 4 shots from the Heavy Slugger, hitting on 4s, getting 1 hit, wounding on a 5, and it fails to wound. Going into the assault phase, there will be no charges declared. And the reason for this is because if any units charge and the Centurion survives, the Ultramarines still have 2 command points left, which could be used for counteroffensive and allow the Centurion Sergeant to attack before the Demon Prince does. So by not charging anyone, this will guarantee that the Demon Prince will attack first before the Centurion Sergeant, and therefore he might be able to kill off the Centurion Sergeant. So we will skip the assault phase with no charges declared and go right into the fight phase between the Demon Prince and the Centurion Sergeant. And the Demon Prince will attack first. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, 6s generate additional, getting 6 hits with 1 additional and 1 reroll. And so here's the reroll first, getting a 7th hit, and now the additional attack, hitting on a 2, and that also hits, getting 8 hits out of 7 attacks. Wounding on 3s. Getting 5 wounds and 3 fails. Minus 2 AP, so 5 4-up armor saves. Passes 2, but fails 3, and that is 6 damage. And so the Centurion will lose his final wound and be removed. And now the Demon Prince will consolidate up to 3 inches towards the closest visible enemy unit. Going into the morale phase, there are no morale tests to take. And so, taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Death Guard successfully finished defending Objective 6 for 2 victory points. However, they failed to secure Objective 5. They failed to complete Scour the Skies, thanks to Mortarion taking the final Stormraven down with him when he died in the Ultramarines turn. And unfortunately, the Chaplain was killed with a crack grenade, and the Centurion was killed with Malefic Talons, so they failed to complete Grandfather's Gift. So now at the end of Death Guard turn 2, the score currently sits at 8 victory points for the Death Guard and 6 victory points for the Ultramarines. Going into Ultramarines turn 3, a reminder that the Ultramarines have 2 command points left, and the Death Guard has 0 command points left. Also a reminder that the Ultramarines held on to defend Objective 5 from the previous turn, and they are 1 turn into holding it, and therefore they will use the mission stratagem, Second Chance, for their final 2 command points in order to hold on to it for 1 more turn. But first, do they get any command points back on rolls of 5 up? And they do not. This does mean that the Ultramarines are also now permanently down to 0 command points. So the Ultramarines also had to draw 3 brand new tactical objectives to bring them up to a total of 4, and they drew no prisoners, score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during your turn. If between 3 and 5 enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 victory points instead, and if 6 or more enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 plus 3 victory points instead. They also drew Secure Objective 1, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 1 at the end of your turn, and they drew Priority Orders Received with bonus tactical objective card, Witch Hunter, which means that only the Warlord Gilmon can complete this card. If he does, they'll get 3 bonus victory points along with whatever the reward is for Witch Hunter, which is score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy Psyker was destroyed during your turn, but it has to be Gilmon who kills the Psyker. And just as a reminder, Objective Marker 5 is right here, currently being held by that Chaplain, and Objective Marker 1 is back here, currently being held by this squad of Tactical Marines. So going into the movement phase for Ultramarines, turn 3, we will start with this Tactical Marine squad. The last cannon will remain still, but the 3 bolt guns, including the Sergeant, are going to move up the board up to 6 inches to reposition themselves better to shoot at the Plague Marines. And they will now finish their movement like so, all nicely well within 24 inches of the Plague Marines. This squad of Tactical Marines will remain still on Objective Marker 3. This Chaplain is going to move up the board up to 6 inches. And the Chaplain will finish his movement right here. He is now 5 1/4 inches away from the Plague Burst Crawler. The Centurion Sergeant is now going to move up the board up to 4 inches towards Objective Marker 5 and will also declare an advance. And here's the advance roll, getting 5 additional inches for potentially 9 inches of total movement. And the Centurion Sergeant will finish its movement here. Its base is just within 3 inches of the center of Objective Marker 5, and so they are still satisfying the requirement for Defend Objective 5. Rabout Gilmon is going to move up to 8 inches towards the Demon Prince of Nurgle and the squad of Plague Marines. And Guilliman will end up right here. He is just over 9 inches away from the Demon Prince of Nurgle, and the Demon Prince of Nurgle is now also the closest visible enemy unit to him. And then finally, this Tactical Marine squad, a couple of the bolt guns are going to slightly reposition just to get themselves back into 6-inch coherency with Guilliman for reroll bonuses. And here's about where they ended up. The last cannon, of course, stayed still, and it's very wobbly model, so they might fall over, but they are all in the crater for the +1 to saving throws, and they are within 6 inches of Guilliman for the ensuing shooting phase. So going into the shooting phase for Ultramarines, turn 3, we will start with Rabout Guilliman firing his Hand of Dominion in rapid fire range into the Demon Prince of Nurgle. 6 shots with the Hand of Dominion, hitting on 2s, getting 5 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 6th hit, wounding on 4s, and getting 4 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting all 6 wounds. 6 4-up armor saves, passing 2 and fails 4 of them. They are 2 damage apiece, so 8 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 but failing 7. And so that will finish off the final 6 wounds on this Demon Prince, and this Demon Prince is killed off. Next, this tactical squad is going to fire its last cannon at the Plague Burst Crawler. 1 shot, hitting on a 3, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. Next, this squad is going to fire its 4 bolt guns into the Plague Marine squad, and it will fire its last cannon into the Plague Burst Crawler. Starting with the last cannon, hitting on a 3, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. Now the 4 bolt guns, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting all 4 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means 5s to wound, getting 2 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, still failing to wound. 2 3-up armor saves, and they pass both. Now this Tactical Marine squad, sitting on Objective Marker 1, is going to fire everything that it has into the Plague Marines. 1 shot from the last cannon, hitting on a 3, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it fails to wound. 4 bolt guns, hitting on 3s, getting 4 hits. Wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up armor save, which fails. 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which passes. Finally, this chaplain is going to fire its Combi Flamer into the Plague Burst Crawler using both profiles. Starting with the bolt gun, hitting on 4s, getting 1 hit and 1 miss. Wounding on a 6, and it fails to wound. Now the Flamer will do D6 shots, getting 3 shots. This weapon automatically hits, so 3 hits. Wounding on 6s, and failing to wound. So now going into the assault phase, there are 2 charges to declare. First is this chaplain declaring a charge onto the Plague Burst Crawler, and second is Guilliman declaring a charge onto the Plague Marines. Guilliman is just under 11 inches away, which means he needs a 10-inch charge, but thanks to his special rules, he gets to add 1 to charge rolls, which means he really only needs a 9-inch charge. So we will resolve Guilliman charging into the Plague Marines first, and the Plague Marines only have 1 bolt pistol worth of Overwatch, hitting on a 6, and it fails to hit. So now Guilliman's charge roll needing at least a 9, and he gets a 12, and he gets to add 1 to his charge distance, which gives him 13 inches of charge. And so after his charge, Guilliman will end up all the way over here, within an inch of this Plague Marine right here. This does mean that Guilliman is over 3 inches away from the Malignant Plaguecaster, Plague Surgeon, and Tallyman, however, so none of them can heroically intervene. So it will simply be Guilliman versus the Plague Marines. So now we will resolve the Chaplain charging into the Plague Burst Crawler, and we will first do the Crawler's Overwatch. Starting with the Heavy Slugger, 4 shots, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. -1 AP, so a 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. So the Chaplain will fall from 4 wounds down to 3. Now the 2 Entropy Cannons, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 2, which wounds. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. It will do D6 damage, and it will do 2 damage. So the chaplain will fall from 3 wounds down to 1 left. And now for his charge range, he will need 5 inches at least in order to make it into combat. And here's the charge roll, and he gets it with a 10. And the chaplain will finish its charge over here so that it is fully within the Death Guard deployment zone, and also he is as far away from the Nurglings as possible while being in the deployment zone. So let's resolve the chaplain's attacks onto the Plague Burst Crawler first. The chaplain will have 3 attacks with his Crozius Arcanum, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits, wounding on 5s, and getting 2 wounds. Minus 1 AP, so 2 4-up armor saves. Passes 1 and fails 1. And it is 2 damage apiece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls. And fails both of them. So the Plague Burst Crawler will drop from 12 wounds down to 10. And now Guilliman will strike against the Plague Marines. So Guilliman with 6 attacks base using the Emperor's Sword, hitting on 2s. And getting 6 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s. Getting 5 wounds, including an additional D3 mortal wounds, and 1 reroll. And so here's the reroll, getting another wound. But first, thanks to the 6, it will do D3 additional mortal wounds. And it will do 3 mortal wounds. Here's 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls. Wow, and passing 2, but failing 1. And so 1 Bubotic Axe will go down. The Emperor's Sword is minus 4 AP, so the 6 normal wounds the Plague Marines will not get armor saves against. And they are 3 damage apiece, which have to be done 1 at a time. So strike number 1, 3 5-up disgustingly resilient, passes 2 and fails 1, but re-rolling the 1. And here's the re-roll. Still failing, so 1 Plague Marine will go down. Strike number 2. All failed, no rerolls, so a 2nd Plague Marine will go down. Strike number 3. 1 passed, 2 failed, so a 3rd Plague Marine will go down. Strike number 4. 1 passed, 2 failed, so a 4th Plague Marine will go down. Strike number 5. Passed 2, failed 1, no rerolls, so a 5th Plague Marine will go down. And finally, strike number 6. 2 definite fails and 1 reroll, but that does mean a 6th Plague Marine will go down. And so with a clean sweep from the Emperor's Sword, Guilliman strikes down the final 6 Plague Marines left alive in the squad. And so because that Plague Marine squad was completely wiped out, Guilliman will now consolidate up to 3 inches and will consolidate into the Malignant Plaguecaster. So now the Malignant Plaguecaster is locked in combat. But first, before we do the attacks back from the Malignant Plaguecaster, the Plague Burst Crawler will get to strike back against the Chaplain with its 3 attacks, hitting on 6s. And failing to hit. So now the Malignant Plaguecaster, with his 3 attacks with the Corrupted Staff, will attack Guilliman, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits, 1 reroll, and because of the 6, getting an additional hit. But here's the reroll first, still failing to hit, and here's the additional attack, which also fails to hit, but getting a reroll, and does hit. So 3 hits out of 3 attacks. Strength 6 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 4s. And all fail to wound. And it is not a plague weapon, so no rerolls. And because that Plague Marine squad was wiped out, going into the morale phase, there are no morale tests to take. And so, taking a look at the tactical objective cards. Thanks to the Centurion moving over, the Ultramarines successfully completed Defend Objective 5 for 2 victory points. The Ultramarines successfully destroyed 2 enemy units, the Demon Prince and the Plague Marine squad, so they get 1 victory point for no prisoners. Those Tactical Marines did successfully secure Objective 1 for 1 victory point. And thanks to Guilliman slaying the Demon Prince in the shooting phase, they will get 4 victory points for priority orders received, Witch Hunter. And so at the end of Ultramarines Turn 3, the score currently sits at 14 victory points for the Ultramarines and 8 victory points for the Death Guard. Going into Death Guard Turn 3, a reminder that the Death Guard have no command points left, and the Ultramarines have no command points left. Also, a reminder that the Death Guard held on to Secure Objective 5, Scour the Skies, and Grandfather's Gift from the previous turn. However, because this is the mission, Targets of Opportunity, the opportunity to secure those targets has now been lost, and all 3 of those objective cards have to be thrown away. And so the Death Guard draw 3 new tactical objective cards, and they draw Supremacy, score D3 victory points if you control any 3 objective markers at the end of your turn. Defend Objective 4, score 2 victory points if you control objective marker 4 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And No Prisoners, score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during your turn. If between 3 and 5 enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 victory points instead. And if 6 or more enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 plus 3 victory points instead. And objective marker 4 is this one right here. And so at this point, the Death Guard are going to concede the game, and we will have a Ultramarines major victory, and the Ultramarines will also achieve Linebreaker thanks to the Chaplain, who is fighting the Plagueburst Crawler, which means we will have a final victory point score of 15 for the Ultramarines and 8 for the Death Guard, and we will have an Ultramarines major victory thanks to a Death Guard concession. So now that it's been announced that the Ultramarines have a major victory thanks to a Death Guard concession, with a final victory point score of 15 for the Ultramarines and 8 for the Death Guard, thanks to this Chaplain right here holding Linebreaker, I can go over 1 or 2 of my final thoughts on this game, and I will try to do so quickly. First and foremost, of course, is the main reason why the Death Guard conceded, and that is Ultramarines turn 3 really messed up the Death Guard's chances of being able to pull off a victory. They got 8 victory points in a single turn thanks to tactical objective cards, which gave the lead back to the Ultramarines and made it incredibly difficult for the Death Guard to attempt to catch up, especially now that both sides have no command points left to spend on the mission stratagem to hold on to an objective card for an extra turn. That makes it impossible to achieve any Defend Objective X cards, which of course the Death Guard then drew. So the main reason for the concession is the Death Guard are too far behind at this point, in my opinion, for them to catch up. It is practically impossible for them to achieve Linebreaker. Most likely they are not going to achieve Slay the Warlord. Of course, this Plagueburst Crawler is locked in combat, which means it has 2 choices in the Death Guard turn. Either stay in combat and possibly finish off that Chaplain, since he only has 1 wound left, but if he stays put, then in the Ultramarines turn 4, the Centurion Sergeant has a pretty much guaranteed move up and charge into combat, and I would put my money on that Centurion Sergeant in close combat over the Plagueburst Crawler. Second choice, of course, is the Plagueburst Crawler falls back out of combat, therefore falling out of charge range from the Centurion Sergeant, but if it does so, it then can't fight the Chaplain in close combat and also can't shoot, making the Plagueburst Crawler essentially useless for at least a full game turn. So too much of a deficit in terms of victory points at this point to come back, the Plagueburst Crawler being effectively neutered for at least a full game turn, and the fact that Guilliman is so close to the other 3 characters, the only 3 characters that Death Guard has left on the table, and their only other real firepower, because the 2 squads of Nurgling Swarms really aren't going to do anything. Their whole purpose is to sit there and hold objectives, which they have done so this game, and they have done so well. At this point, Death Guard essentially needs to table the Ultramarines in order to win this game, and unfortunately for the Death Guard, the Ultramarines still have 3 full tactical squads, all with last cannons of course, that are fully capable of doing damage. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I thought it was a really interesting game, especially for the first 1.5 game turns with the back and forth between the Storm Ravens and Mortarion and all the other various happenings. I mean, the fact that Mortarion dropped to 1 wound but then stayed alive, the Storm Ravens dropped to 1 wound but then stayed alive, and then got killed when Mortarion went down and took it with him. Just crazy. So I thought it was a very interesting game, all the way up until when Ultramarines kind of ran away with it. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next one.